Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is Election Edge, Friday's edition, 6 o'clock on the East Coast, 3 o'clock out West. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to go over everything from the Democratic convention. We're going to talk about RFK dropping out of the race. We're going to go through polling, policy positions, you name it. But first and foremost, let me sort of start with this. And oh, by the way, don't forget, we're streaming on X at Patriot TV Network. We're on YouTube Live, Patriot TV Network, Rumble, Roku, Apple. We're all over the place. All right, now that we got that out of the way. All right, so the news of the day coming out today is that RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he decides to bow out of the race and endorse Donald Trump. Now, this should come as no surprise to anyone who's been watching Election Edge, because we've been talking about it for the past few days. But it's really striking that, and I should not say this is surprising at all, because the Democratic Party of his father and his uncle, it doesn't even resemble the same party today. Now, he cited a litany of reasons in his speech today in Arizona about why he is dropping out of this race and why he is endorsing Donald Trump. And we're gonna sort of go through those. But I can represent this to you, and you, the loyal viewers and listeners of Election Edge, know this. We try to present the fair facts to you, let you come up with your opinions, and then we'll have a discussion about it. But the fact of the matter is, we're sitting here today, and Kennedy, who prior to Joe Biden dropping out, he was polling 10, 11, 12%. Joe Biden drops out. Kamala Harris becomes the heir apparent. She's official now as of Thursday night. So some of the support that Kennedy had was what they called the double haters, people that did not want to vote for Joe Biden. They did not want to vote for Donald Trump. Post Biden dropping out and Harris honeymoon, Kennedy's support dropped down into the 4 to 6% range. Now, a lot of people were saying, well, Mark, that's not a significant number. No, I'm going to tell you why it is a significant number. I believe that a lot of those double haters, when Biden dropped out, a lot of them went for Kamala Harris. And I think that's why Kennedy's poll numbers basically got cut in half, and why Harris's numbers surged. Think about who some of the voters were for Kennedy. They were younger voters, okay, a lot of Hispanic voters. So I'm seeing polling out there now that is basically saying, well, Harris is gaining support among younger voters. Well, where'd she pick up that support from? A lot of it came from Kennedy supporters. The other thing Kennedy did today, he not only just suspended his campaign, but he's taking his name off the ballot in the 7, 8 key swing states that are going to decide this election. Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. And true to form, what did the Democratic Party do? Well, they called him a traitor, a liar, every possible negative name you could use. Good riddance, we're glad to be rid of him. And that is the son and the nephew of a former president and United States senator, both of whom were assassinated, one while he was in office and the other while he was running for office. I mean, you can have policy differentials. I get it. But to do the things that the Democratic Party did to Kennedy to keep him irrelevant in this election, I mean, think about it. Little history lesson here. They did not basically want him even running against Joe Biden. Biden, as it's been well documented, got 14 million votes. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that because Kamala Harris is the nominee. And for people in our party to bitch and complain about Joe Biden, it's a waste of time. So we're not going to go there. Okay. But the Democratic Party, which is an identity politics party, and I'll use this term loosely, a feel-good party, because they want, as they say, the joy and the vibe. And we'll get into a little bit about the joy and the vibe a little bit later. But sticking with Kennedy, his name is off the ballot in the swing states. But his name will be on the ballot in the deep red states and in the deep blue states. I shouldn't just call them deep red, deep blue. They're red states, blue states. The outcome of those states is pretty well predetermined because candidates they're not even campaigning in those states. I mean, basically, you've got 43 states that neither campaign is going to. Well, can you imagine living in those swing states, the advertising that you're getting bombarded with on a daily basis? Amazing. But let me go over some of Kennedy's points about why he said he's dropping out of this race and why he wanted to run in the Democratic Party, but he was forced out. He said the Democratic Party has become the party of war. Well, the Kennedy clan is anti-war for certain. And let's think about it. Is there some substance on that to the merits? Well, when Donald Trump was president, the United States wasn't involved in any wars. There was no Russia-Ukraine. There was no Israel-Hamas. Trump went to North Korea, visited with Kim Jong-un. Trump's position was really clear. He used to call him Rocket Man. But if he could diffuse an international incident, why not do it? And he did. People would always complain, well, Trump's too close to Putin. There weren't any Russian attacks on Ukraine when Trump was president. So Kennedy has the belief that the Democratic Party is a party of war. The Democratic Party Harris said it the other night, they will 100% continue to support Ukraine. Now, a lot of people in the Republican Party are on the opposite end of that. So could that have an effect? Yeah, sure. Second thing that he talked about, he said the Democrats are the party of big pharma. I can argue both sides of that coin, but the one thing Kennedy was crystal clear on, he did not like those mandates, the vaccination requirements, all the stuff that happened during COVID that were basically driven down the American people's throats. So he was really against that. He said that when you saw this Democratic convention, that democracy is a slogan, and he's right about that. They twisted and turned that convention 6 ways to Sunday. And for the Democratic Party to portray itself as patriots, given their horrific policies and anti-American actions, there's no way you can consider that party patriots, notwithstanding the wool they tried to pull over everybody's eyes at the convention. And they put on a good show. I will give them credit for that. What they lacked in substance, they made up with production. They're very good at that. They've got a lot of Hollywood in the Democratic Party. I expected nothing less. And for the most part, their speakers were right on cue. He says that the Democratic Party's become the party of censorship. There is no doubt about that, what they tried to do to him. Heck, he said in his speech, he would do 10, 12 interviews a day. Only 2 times did they ever get aired on network television. 2. So the powers that be in the media did everything they could to keep Kennedy out. They wouldn't have him on. They didn't take him seriously. He went out. He got the millions of signatures needed to get on ballots, but it wasn't enough. He had to deal with constant litigation with Democratic National Committee. And whereas they use lawfare to try to have Kennedy off the ballots, well, they tried to use lawfare to put Trump in jail. That's what the Democratic Party does when they see obstacles in their way. It's like a bulldozer. It's their way or the highway. There were more. The legal challenges. Again, many times he had to defend positions. Cost money. You know, it's not easy running a campaign. They had to go out and get signatures, hire lawyers. It gets expensive. Now people say, well, you know, his vice president, you know, is extremely wealthy. Yeah, she helped finance part of the campaign, but there's a limit to everything. The other thing that Kennedy said really took him away from the Democratic Party, the cognitive recognition, or the recognition that Joe Biden's cognitive abilities were declining, and yet they covered it up. He wasn't happy about that. And, of course, you know, he didn't like the fact that Biden got his 14 million votes, and, you know, the bigwigs and the party donors basically said enough's enough. Pelosi and Schumer basically had a meeting, and they got rid of him. Okay, we're not going to talk anymore about that. We said we won't. So when you add all these factors up, Kennedy off the ballot, what they tried to do with Trump, Kennedy and his running mate, Nicole Sheridan, they wanted no part of a Kamala Harris Democratic ticket. So in Election Edge's view, he did the right thing. His views lined up more closely with Donald Trump than they did with the Democratic Party. And as we've said on numerous occasions here on Election Edge, again, this is not your father's Democratic Party. This isn't even a half a generation's Democratic Party. The Joe Biden administration makes the Barack Obama administration look like moderates. And if you go back to the next Democratic president before him, it makes the Clinton administration look downright conservative. Now, you take where we were with President Biden, fast forward Kamala Harris's positions, and those are well known, and we'll show the video a little bit later. But if you listen to her speech on Thursday night, which I did meticulously, as many of you did, you know, that was a speech that a moderate Republican could have given, and 80% of that speech would have been acceptable to moderate Republicans. That's how far away from reality that speech was, based upon what her positions are. So Kennedy had a lot of ammunition here. Obviously, he wasn't happy with the COVID piece. He didn't like the way he was being portrayed. He didn't like the lawfare against him by his former party. He didn't like being kept off the ballot, and on and on. So if I'm in Kennedy's shoes, I think he did the right thing. And then you have to ask yourself this question: will it matter? Well, in those 7 swing states, which are likely to be decided by a maximum of 1 to 2 points or less, if Kennedy was getting 4 to 5% of the vote, which he was in most of those states, and early polling indicates Trump could peel off 65, 70% of that, that could make basically a point to point and a half difference. And Jill Stein is going to be staying in the race. She's getting about 1% of the vote right now. Cornel West, he's polling from 0 to 0.5%. So if you look at the aggregate electorate and say, okay, there's 100% of the vote eligible to get, it's really going to be about 98.5% to 99%, because a lot of other write-ins folks come in too. So we had talked earlier about what Trump needs to do to win the election, and we had said he needs to get close to 48% to win. That number just ratcheted up about another 0.5%. He's now going to need to be 48.5 to 49 to win this election. And I'll get into that a little bit later in the show. But as far as Kennedy's piece, I think Trump did the right thing. He welcomed it. And Now, if they can get Kennedy out campaigning in some of these swing states to win those voters who are supporting him over to Trump, this will end up turning out to be a win-win. All right, we're going to take our first break. We'll be back in 2 minutes, but when we come back, we're going to dive into that speech Kamala Harris delivered, the events of the Democrats, where this election stands, and where we go from here. We'll be back in about 2 minutes.
Former National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
Every American needs this historical DVD keepsake. Flynn delivered the truth, whatever the cost. Hand signed by General Michael Flynn. Order now at the Patriot TV store. Use promo code PTV at checkout to get special savings. The Patriot TV store, a secure, hassle-free shopping experience.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most precious assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals at 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900.
And we're back. And again, a special thanks to Dr. Kirk Elliott, huge supporter of Patriot.tv. Folks, with gold prices at record highs and dollars floating all over the globe, pick up that phone and call Kirk. They're a terrific company, great customer service, and they will treat you right. Okay, we're back now, and we have a special guest joining us today. She's part of the Patriot TV family. Sherronna Bishop, welcome to Election Edge. Happy to have you with me today.
Mark, thank you so much for having me. I love the topics you're covering. I can tell you right now, mothers across this country are not buying this cackling lip service that was delivered by Kamala Harris.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I'm going to get into a little bit of the polling piece in a minute, but when I watched that speech last night, or excuse me, Thursday night, excuse me. Yeah, it was last night. Come on, Mark, it's your days.
Oh,
so
it seems like a lifetime ago.
It did. And why does it seem like a lifetime ago? Because, Sherronna, in watching that speech, that could have been delivered by a moderate Republican, like a Lowell Weicker type guy, someone who is on the Republican side, but slightly to the left of center. I mean, there used to be some of those, not anymore, but there used to be. But my point was this. Every policy position that she had previously taken, you never would have known it by that speech last night. I mean, 80% of Republicans, if you just took the name Kamala Harris out and put a generic body in there and they delivered that speech, Sherronna, tough borders, tough on crime, we're going to we're going to protect against illegal immigrant, we're going to fight crime, inflation's going to come down. And I'm sitting here watching this speech saying, wait a minute, those are Trump's positions.
Yeah.
What'd you make of that last night? Please.
The reality is that conservatives win on policy every single time. The less government there is, the happier the people are. And Kamala knows that. The Biden administration knows that. All polling is directing that people want to have control over their lives. The border is the number one issue. And when you see Democrats banding together, literally Jared Polis leading the way through the Governors Association to convince Democrats they need to start saying we want to close the border, even though Democrat states by and large across the country are already sanctuary states. They already were open borders. They've attracted all of this. They brought it all here. They brought the poisoning through fentanyl to our children. Over 200,000 people dead now due to that horrible policy. People understand what's going on. And so the best hope that Kamala has is to repeat our rhetoric, albeit though very vaguely. You might point out, I mean, there was no real clear policies given, no way forward, because we're in the mess we're in right now due to literally doing the opposite of what she was at least vaguely referencing to in her speech. It was all cloudy vision and, again, unclear on the actual positions of how we would get there, since they've already destroyed our country over the last 3.5 years. This is what they have to do: confuse the public, still guarantee some free stuff, and then preach our conservative rhetoric. Close the borders, defend the family, and make America strong again. I mean, I've literally heard them even say, make America great again. As you mentioned, that's Trump's slogan.
You're spot on here. And again, watching it, I'm sitting here thinking, I know they're good at slick productions, but I mean, literally just to effectively steal Trump's ideas and his policies and brand them as theirs. Listen, something is working out there for her, okay? But my sense, Sherronna, is I think people are going to see through that, because she did not believe what she was preaching last night. And, you know, we're going to have a little parody on this a little bit later on in the program. But she did mention a couple things last night. She did say that she wants a path forward to citizenship for the illegal immigrants in this country. She said she would sign the bill previously that never made it to Joe Biden's desk. Okay. Sherronna, as last I looked, Joe Biden is still president and she's still vice president. And effectively, she not only is distancing herself from the Biden policies, but if you came in from Mars, you would never even know that she's the vice president. You would thinking that she's running against Trump as the incumbent, which is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, if you recall, during the presidency, the primary Democrat race, she never garnered more than 5% of the vote. People do not like her. They still do not like her. I think that by and large, Black Americans see through this nonsense. Hispanics who have conservative values are seeing through this nonsense. There's so many regular, just normal people on the ground who are championing for the cause of America. They see what's coming. I mean, I see it every single day. With the Lindell Offense Fund, we have a great guy on the ground at the DNC who's talking to Democrats who are not buying Kamala's rhetoric. They're not. They came for the show. They came, for the kicks and giggles. That's fine. But they're not there to actively support this woman. I think if you noticed, even the endorsement speeches really weren't that much about her. It was these guys getting their 5 minutes of fame, trying to be remembered for their failed administrations or hide those failed administrations, and that's gotten us to where we are now. But I just don't think that it's sticking. I really don't. I mean, there are so many people who are disillusioned. Just if you only took the open borders and the impact of violence against our own citizens, and then the use of our services, our social services going to illegal aliens all across the country, that's dramatically impacting the low economic class in America. They no longer have those services available to them, and that matters to them. So it's interesting to watch the Democrats literally just cut their own feet out from under them, trying to flood our country with these illegal votes. I mean, I really think that's what this boils down to. They are going to try one last time to steal this election. There is no fanfare. There's no love for Kamala Harris. There's just not. And for those who've been at the DNC this week and have watched it firsthand, it's not electric. It's not passion. you've got a few weirdos, and then you have a lot of groups who are actually protesting the DNC because, again, they love to eat their own. If things aren't going quite right, they eat their own. And that's exactly what's happening right now. The Israel faction, the Hamas faction, Palestinian faction, they're having a civil war within their party right now. They don't believe this is democracy for those who hail democracy, like you mentioned, literally having Kamala installed right now, acting as the president of the United States. I just,
Yeah.
for these real true liberals, this is appalling.
Well, you mentioned the Hamas wing of the Democratic Party, and they refused to give the pro-Palestinian speaker an opportunity to speak at the convention. And again, I'm not going to tell them how to run a convention because they ran it pretty damn well, other than the fact they were always late and their speaker spoke too long, and they had Biden. It was probably intentional, going off at 11:30 at night. And of course, Michelle Obama badmouthed the Biden administration, and Joe's on a couch in California. So, I mean, I could go on and on about that. But Sherronna, the one thing that they continued doing at that convention was lying. I mean, it was consistent. And I'm going to go through the following lies, and I want to expose them and get your comments on them. They tried to paint Donald Trump as someone who would outlaw abortion across the country. Trump has never advocated that policy. Second, they said Donald Trump is going to try to cut Medicare. He has never advocated that policy. They said Donald Trump is going to cut your Social Security. Not only did he never say that, Donald Trump has proposed not taxing Social Security benefits. Sherronna, those were just three of the lies that they told at that convention. I'm sure you can come up with more, but what was your impression of just the whole presentation? I mean, it seemed like it was an abortion convention with bashing Trump. That's what I took away from it.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the acknowledgement that it was a pro-abortion convention. Some people liken it to a Satanist ritual, actually, a satanic ritual, complete with vasectomies for men. So let's just stop babies altogether. I think that you mentioned with President Trump, we've already had 4 years with President Trump. We already know what a Trump presidency is like, and we already know that it was better for everybody. Even in strong Democrat-controlled states, there was the hope that things could get better. You at least did not have the federal government meddling. You certainly didn't have the federal government creating domestic terrorist watch lists and using their enforcement arm to raid regular Americans' homes, mothers' homes, fathers' homes, anti-abortion protesters, pro-life protesters, rather, is what I would say, Catholics. You didn't have any of that happening under President Trump. And I think that the lies that they continue to pronounce while trying to pretend to be conservative, stealing talking points, as you mentioned, again, everyone in America is doing a gut check right now. And I know there's going to be that 10% that's just loyal to the end. This is the cult. This is the religion they signed up for. So be it. But for the 90% of Americans who still have their brain attached and are thinking somewhat critically for themselves, they cannot deny what a horrible state America is in. They didn't talk about inflation. They didn't talk about the cost of groceries. They didn't talk about the cost of gasoline. They didn't talk about our children not getting an education, rather being indoctrinated. They didn't talk about the massive increase in suicide in our children. They didn't talk about the trans ideology that's causing children to mutilate themselves, and in turn, creating a higher suicide rate there as well. They didn't talk about the fentanyl crisis. They didn't talk about illegals who are killing our daughters. And because of that, I know people are sitting back saying, this is not the party for me anymore. Mike Lindell was there and he was talking to Democrats and they were saying, this party does not represent me any longer. But they feel lost. When you're in a party affiliation, it feels like a family a lot of the time, especially if you've grown up generationally being a Democrat. But as you pointed out at the beginning of this show, they have absolutely obliterated Robert Kennedy, RFK. And he literally comes from one of the greatest presidents that we had, who was willing to stand up and fight for the regular everyday American and get us out of foreign interferences. I'm shocked and appalled at the treatment that they've doled out for him.
Right.
And these generational Democrats, I believe they see through it. I truly do.
Well, we're going to do this. We're going to take a mid-course break here, but when we come back, we've got a little parody that I think you're going to like. And now, when we come back, folks, this is a parody. It's not actual policies, but we think you're going to get a kick out of it. We'll be back in 90 seconds. Then Madam Producer, key up the parody, and then Sherronna and I will talk about it on the other side of the break.
Don't let them win. Patriot TV is committed to delivering the truth. America's new network for Patriots is growing fast, and we'd love you to join us as a member of Patriot TV. Your support makes it possible for us to continue to deliver unbiased reporting, thought-provoking discussions, and insights you won't find anywhere else. From in-depth interviews to behind-the-scenes footage, Patriot TV brings you closer to the voices shaping our nation's future. Whether it's political developments, cultural shifts, or global affairs, Patriot TV keeps you informed and empowered. As a member of Patriot TV, you'll get perks like personal invitations to exclusive Patriot TV events, where you can gather and network with like-minded Americans. We'll also host online events throughout the year with General Flynn, who's committed to host live Q&A webinars where callers like you can ask him questions and get real answers. Access to these events will be members only, so go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member. It's fast and easy. We have a great membership option starting at just $9.99 a month, or save with our annual membership for only $99, or take advantage of the best value, the 2-year membership for just $159. Go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member. It's fast and easy. Do your part to make sure the truth gets out to all Patriots and help ensure future programming. Become a member today. Just go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member, join today.
Hi, this is Tim.
It's Kamala Harris. Good morning, Governor.
Good morning, Madam Vice President.
Listen, you weren't my first choice. To be honest, you weren't even in my top 10. But no one else wants to run as my VP because they all know I'm going to lose. You are the only one who is willing to be my running mate.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically career suicide. But I did some dumb shit a few years back, and now I'm totally controlled by the deep state. And so they told me either I become your running mate or I get Epstein in a New York prison.
Now, the fact that we're both radical communists is a slight problem, but I got some instructions from Big Daddy Barack. Basically, we're going to pretend that you're a normal American white guy. There's a bunch of things you did that we got to run away from here. You passed a law requiring tampons in the boys' bathroom in schools. You basically cheered on the George Floyd rioters who burned down your cities. You implemented a snitch hotline during COVID. And Tim, you signed a law that allows the state to take custody of children if their parents refuse to let them transition. I mean, what the f***, Tim? We got a lot of cleanup to do here. But listen, we already got the mainstream media gaslighting America into thinking that you're super normal.
This is America's dad, America's football coach, and the teacher that's cool enough without trying to be cool.
A lot of people have noticed this sort of down-to-earth, likable quality to him.
He's very moderate in Congress.
A moderate Democrat, a centrist, but a more centrist.
Kind of a centrist Midwesterner in persona.
That's pretty funny because I'm weird as f***.
Americans are dumb, Tim. They'll believe anything we tell them.
They are so dumb, right?
They think I'm black. Okay, so here's the plan. In order to hide your own weirdness, we want you to accuse Trump and J.D. Vance of being weird. Just say it over and over again.
Weird, 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 weird. And then they start being weird. They're weird, 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 weird. Donald Trump's weirdness. Very weird, weird. It's just too weird. It's weird, weird. Okay, so how far left are we admitting to being here? Like, are we openly woke?
We have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke. Yeah. No, we're flip-flopping on everything right now. We want to keep the voters confused. You know when your GPS suddenly starts rerouting inexplicably and you have no idea where you're going and you're afraid your GPS might just drive you off a cliff? We're exactly like that.
What do we say if reporters ask us about policy stuff?
Oh, we're not taking questions from reporters, Tim. We're not prepared for that. But if you do find yourself in a tricky spot with a reporter, just cackle.
Cackle.
Yeah, cackle.
You're considered the most liberal United States senator.
Somebody said that, and it actually was Mike Pence on the debate stage. But
yeah. And is that a socialist or progressive perspective?
No. What do you want to know?
Wow, that's horrifying.
Exactly. It's horrifying, but distracting. Okay, so Tim, tell me, your radical left political views, are those real?
Oh, no, of course not. No, honestly, I will have whatever political views you pay me to have.
I love it, Tim. You're like the white male version of me.
You're right. No one voted for me either. Hey, Kamala, let's see what can be unburdened by what has been.
All right, buddy. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Hey, you ever notice that Harris Waltz sounds like Harry Balls?
I had not noticed that. Thank you for that. Bye, Tim.
All right. So, Sherronna, again, folks, that is a parody. We're not endorsing that, but throwing a little humor at you here. But Sherronna, a lot of stuff that they were talking about.
Mark, I need to be unburdened by what has just been. I must admit that. First of all, kudos to you there's a lot of truth in that little video right there. A lot of truth. Even admitting being a deep state pawn. Wow, that was fantastic.
Well, thanks. I mean, our crack research staff delivered that for us. And, when we were laughing through it, but I mean, a lot of what they talked about, we're going to gaslight the American public. Sure enough, confirmed. He is a radical leftist. He's admitted it. She ran to the left of Bernie Sanders. She admitted that. And a little bit later in the show, if we have time, we'll play her policy positions. But the point is, they are not who they say they are, and they are gaslighting the American public. Sherronna, I saw a little clip where at the DNC, they were asking some of the young supporters, some of the younger delegates, probably late 20s, early 30s, what policy positions of Vice President Harris they really liked, and they were speechless. What say you?
Well, the best that I've heard was they liked her rhetoric, her uplifting rhetoric, and for democracy. Those aren't policy positions, as you pointed out. That's narrative, and it literally just demonstrates how ignorant that voting group is going to be, and that's really disappointing. America's not done a good job of educating its kids, and parents need to really step it up with that. But we've talked about that, the gaslighting of Kamala Harris and pretending to be what she's not, flip-flopping on every position that she's ever had. I don't think that the American public is going to be fooled. And I know that the polls are saying certain things, but when we have the people on the ground and we look at the history of low propensity voters who are now showing up to register to vote, I think this is going to be a groundswell like we've never seen, simply because Kamala Harris subverted democracy when she literally was appointed to be the candidate. That is not what most Democrats think that they're signing up for. Even though they're mostly communists at this point, they still want to have the symbolism of election, of having a vote, of having some kind of say. And I have to actually admit, I believed that the superdelegates were going to swoop in at the DNC convention and replace Kamala with Hillary. I have had a hard time believing that Hillary is really going to let Kamala be the first female president of the United States of America. So I was actually pretty surprised at the restraint there by the superdelegates. I also want to point out, at this point in the game, Kamala hasn't been able to raise money for her party. She hasn't been able to raise money for this candidacy. And you bring, I hate to say it, but Democrats, they always end up turning to old white men to represent them, even though they adamantly deny appreciating the old white men who established this country and who basically make up half of this country. They constantly say that they don't like how men dictate what happens in this country, but now the Democrats are screaming that this is relief. The relief is coming from the epitome of what they say they hate. And I have to believe that this young generation also doesn't like that. So the Democrats are, again, they're having a massive identity crisis because they don't even know what they're doing anymore. They just need to find a pathway forward to win, even if it means, destroying your country with massive illegal immigration to have a name that you can put on a ballot to try to cheat one more time. I really see that they've not cared about this country for quite some time, and they're willing to do everything possible to have that position of power, even if it means destroying this country. And I'm not alone on that. My generation, their eyes are open. They've seen what has happened to their children. They've seen what's happened to the elderly. They see that a carton of eggs is now $8. They see it, they feel it, they know that this administration is lying about what they have done, and most especially what they haven't done.
A lot of the polling, Sherronna, they're saying that Harris is leading in the gender gap with women by 12 points now. And that's true, okay? But it's not that out of line. I mean, Biden won the women's vote. I think it was 9 to 10 points. So maybe 2 points, 3 points, a little bit more. What is never mentioned in there is that white men, and now a decent chunk of black men, are going for Trump. I mean, Trump leads among white men, or let's just say men in general. He's got about a 10-point lead. So there's like a 22-point gender gap there, plus 12 for Harris among women, plus 10 for Trump. Most of the polling is showing Harris with a 1.5 to 2 point lead. In the Real Clear Politics average, it's about 1.5 points. The Hill, which runs an aggregate of polling, it's about 2.5 points, 3. But here's the sort of the dirty little secret behind all these polls. In the 7 swing states that are going to decide this election, they're all plus or minus 1 or 2 points. But the underlying issues are breaking towards President Trump, meaning the key issues that those undecided or independent voters who will control this election by a fairly large margin, Sherronna, on both the border and illegal immigration, inflation in the economy, crime and security, they go for Trump. So again, this is not a popularity contest about who gets the most votes. It's who gets the most votes to be able to get 270 electoral votes. And Sherronna, I submit this to you. I believe she will get no bounce out of this convention. And I believe that her polling likely peaked just before or right during the first part of that convention. And my belief is when she now has to get out beyond what I'll call the friendly walls of the United Center in Chicago, notwithstanding this is day 33 with no interviews, no press releases, I think the media will grow tired of that and she will get exposed. And as you mentioned earlier in the program, she is going to have to debate the president.
So I was there watching in Chicago when the first Black Republican office was opened just a few months ago. The Teamsters Union formally endorsed President Trump in Chicago and showed up to speak on the stage with Mike Lindell. Things are changing so rapidly, again, because resources are being taken away from Black citizens and given to illegal aliens. People feel that. They see it. They are experiencing it in real time. And 2 great things are happening due to all of this. Number one, they're becoming independent-minded. They need to be able to think for themselves and assess the situation. We need more Americans doing that, regardless of what the polls say. I'm always very curious about the polls. I want to know what questions they're asking, the way in which they're asking it, and what group they're even polling. So I'm pretty skeptical at this point, Mark, about the polling system at large. Again, because our feet are so close to the regular people that are on the ground doing the work, who are talking to the citizens in each of these swing states. In Pennsylvania, for example, there's a huge outcry right now that the voter rolls be cleared up, that there's still 100,000 voters from the 2022 election that are illegitimate voters that have never been dealt with. And the people of Pennsylvania know that. You know, it's a funny thing, and we say it all the time, but when the Amish turn out to vote, you know that America is in trouble. And that's going to happen all over again in 2024. I have no confidence whatsoever that Wisconsin or Georgia will go to a Democrat, no matter what at this point. Again, we've been too close to the ground to hear what citizens are actually saying. So I'm not a huge supporter of the polls. But you did touch on something that I think is critical to just remind Americans, and that was the issue of abortion. What President Trump did and what the Supreme Court really did in returning that back to the states, because it is not a constitutional right to have an abortion. And the Supreme Court, you know, they only rule on the issues that are outlined and defined in our Constitution. And so that's not a constitutional right. It was always supposed to be a state's right to determine. And so that has been as it should be. It is. The states need to decide. We voted state by state. The legislatures have voted, and it's what it should be. The power should be with the states more than the federal government. And I think that's just an education piece. I really do. I'm exhausted at this point of women demanding their abortions and saying that they have fewer rights than men. Men never had the right to kill babies. They've never had that right. Only women have had that right. And as a woman, I feel confident to speak on this because I've seen what abortion does to women. They are sold a lie, and then they have to live with that reality for the rest of their lives. Abortion hurts women, but at the end of the day, when it comes to elections, it is the states that need to dictate and decide. President Trump is not going to be outlawing abortion because it's not in his executive power to do so. And that just needs to be emphatically educated to the masses.
Right. Well, and I'll close out this segment. I agree with you on that. And I do want to close this piece out here. There's polling out there from Rasmussen that has Trump up too. And when I look state by state about what it's going to take to win this election, Brian Kemp, governor of Georgia, and President Trump have mended fences. A few weeks ago, I was highly critical of Trump for criticizing Kemp in the middle of a speech in Atlanta. And I think he listened to voices around him who he respects that said, come on, Mr. President, mend fences here. Brian Kemp is a hugely popular governor in Georgia, and I was really happy to hear that. I saw it, both Trump complimenting Kemp and Kemp saying, look, I'm full throat for Donald Trump in Georgia. All right, we're going to take a quick 90-second break, and then when we come back, we're going to dive into a couple of those other swing states, and we're going to show you how Donald Trump can and should win this election. The betting markets have it split 50-50 right now. Be back in 90 seconds.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
Attention patriotic businesses. Do you want to see your sales skyrocket by selling your products or services to like-minded patriots? Well, if you're an advertiser who embodies the timeless principles of freedom, liberty, and patriotism, look no further than Patriot TV. Our viewers are responsive, economically active patriots who are committed to supporting businesses like yours that align with their values. For more information on advertising on America's new network of proud American businesses, email us at advertise@patriot.tv.
And we're back with Sherronna Bishop. Sherronna, one other point closing out on polling is this. 4 years ago, 3.5, Joe Biden was up by almost 8 points on Donald Trump on this day and ended up winning by 4. Hillary Clinton was up 5.5. She ended up losing. So I believe there is a hidden Trump voter. I mean, I've heard some polling companies say when people call up and they tell them they're a pollster, they get an FU, I'm voting for Trump, and then they hang up. But I do believe Trump does better than his polling. And I had these comments by voters who had not made up their mind yet when speaking to pollsters. These are the undecided. Trump, up for the job, strong leader, and we need change. Those are not characteristics that you would associate with Kamala Harris.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And just interestingly enough on the subject of polls, so I do see that Newsweek does have a new poll out that's showing that President Trump Kamala Harris is not leading in any one of the swing states. They're saying that they're tied in Michigan, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. But again, I do not believe Wisconsin will go to a Democrat at this point. There's been so much upheaval because of the electorate system there and the elections issues there with the actual voting platforms. And I've seen it. I hear from these people, and I do not think that Wisconsin can possibly go to a Democrat at this point. I really do not. So as far as polling goes, I'm with you there. And here's the thing, as you just said, And I think America would be ready for a female president if the female president was qualified. This is what DEI, diversity hiring, all of this stuff, equity and inclusion has done to us. It's literally prepped the mind to accept low standards just because they meet a certain identity politic. And that's what we have with Kamala Harris. She's not fit to be president. I don't care that she's a woman. And when they're talking about the females supporting Kamala Harris, I've yet to meet a woman that is supporting Kamala Harris. I've seen a lot who've been screaming for Hillary to be on the ballot, but I haven't seen anyone who's genuinely excited for Kamala Harris. So I would be surprised, like you said, if when they get to the voting booth on election day, if they do not sit there and go, you know what? I can't take 4 more years of this. I can't take 40% inflation. I can't take $5 gas a gallon. I can't take $10 eggs. I'm voting for Trump.
Well, and to add to what you're saying there, the joy and vibes of that Democratic convention, when real Americans are sitting there, and as you said, they're paying $5, $6 for a carton of eggs, gas prices. They go to the grocery bills are up 22%. And, we talk about the border, people coming to 12 million people crossing that border. You mentioned it earlier in the show. And I think this is one of the reasons President Trump is garnering 17, 18% of the black vote among black men. It's because the social services that have to go with helping the illegal immigrants that come across that border, it's astounding. Forget the drugs coming across. These kids, they've got to be housed. They've got to be fed. They still give them Obama phones. They put them up in hotels. The social cost of this are enormous. And black men see this. They see what it was like when they were working under President Trump versus where things are right now. And yes, the Federal Reserve talked about cutting interest rates today, and that's probably going to happen in September. But Sherronna, I really believe that when you factor all this in place, and we already talked about, you talked about Wisconsin, you think that's going to go red. I firmly believe that Governor Kemp's operation in Georgia, plus the fact that Trump is popular in Georgia, I think he wins Georgia. Then that brings the question mark to the state among states where by far the most ad spending is going on, Pennsylvania. Trump won it in 16, he lost it in 20. I've got to believe that all of this talk about Harris and fracking and the economic woes in Pennsylvania, every poll in Pennsylvania I've seen has showed President Trump up, albeit not a lot, but I got to believe, you mentioned the Amish vote, there's a lot of hunters in Pennsylvania. Now, unfortunately, some of them aren't registered to vote, so they got to get out and register and they got to vote. But if we can turn out the voters who support the president and get them to the polls and not wait till election day, if you can vote by mail, vote by mail. If you have early voting, get out there and vote early. Sherronna, I think we'll be in a much better situation in Pennsylvania where we won't go into election day down 600,000 votes. What are your thoughts on those topics?
Well, I definitely want to come back and talk more about elections and election strategy. We've been working on a plan for the last 3 years that's been implemented throughout the country. And it's very important actually for people to understand that when you vote early, you alert how many numbers are needed to fill in the gap to secure the election for the candidate that is wanted or desired by people other than the voter. So I want to encourage that, election day is really where we want people to be casting and when we want them to be casting that ballot. So it's just kind of a fact at this point of what has gone on, the shenanigans that have gone on with early voting. But I love that you're talking about Pennsylvania, and there's incredible work on the ground. Audit the Vote Pennsylvania is doing amazing work there, demonstrating all of the fake voters, all the fake ballots that have been cast. So in my mind, what I think right out the gate is in these 7 swing states, there needs to be litigators ready to go. The attorneys have to be ready preemptively to file any lawsuits, any injunctions that need to happen as soon as we see fraud on the ground. And I believe that's exactly what the RNC is doing. I'm actually really impressed with how they're moving so quickly on the election front to secure our elections across the country. Christina Bobb is doing a fantastic job. Laura Trump is very dedicated to making sure that these election platforms are secure on election day. And should they pull shenanigans, the attorneys are going to be ready to go. But we need the people on the ground who are reporting these things, who are alerting us and telling us what's going on. So I wanted to come back and talk more about election plans across the country. But in Pennsylvania, absolutely absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Getting out the vote is one thing, but I think, again, your livelihood, your bottom dollar, that, most people right now in America are buying their groceries on credit cards and they're not able to pay that bill at the end of the month. Okay, their debt is rising, the interest rates are rising, and they can't pay this stuff down. So the unfortunate thing is when you feel the burn, you're willing to go take action. And that's what we need every American to be doing right now, specifically in those states, but really every state in the union needs to be prepared to get out and vote on election day.
Well, and another thing I want to point out, 2/3 of the American public believe the country's going in the wrong direction. So, I mean, if it's gone in the wrong direction, and again, I know the vice president at that convention tried to pretend she wasn't the vice president, had nothing to do with any of these policies, after affirming that, yes, she was always the last person in the room with Joe Biden. We know that's not true. So, look, if people are unhappy, they generally vote their pocketbook. And all indicators are that Donald Trump is more trusted by the electorate than Kamala Harris. And why wouldn't he be? The man's a billionaire. He's built multiple businesses. Yeah, some of them haven't worked. So what? That happens in business. Not every business works. But he has the experience, and I think he has the trust of enough people. I mean, I've heard multiple voters say, oh, man, I really can't stand that guy's personality. But, man, when he ran the country, things were going well. And I believe that's going to happen. Another example, okay, and I want to sort of tie this one up here with you, Sherronna. We did get some favorable news. Arizona election law, came out. It was a mixed opinion, one we won, one we lost. But at least there's an effort to identify proof of citizenship to vote. Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, 6,000 names of illegal immigrants removed from the voter rolls. Okay, so that was a favorable. My point is, as we head into this election, I think Republicans, they have their eyes wide open. They're well aware that Mark Elias, Kamala Harris, they have an army of lawyers that are going to be protecting the Democrats. And I think the Republicans need to be at that same level because, look, folks, this is going to be a tight election. Even the liberal commentators are telling you it's going to come down to 20 to 40,000 votes in a handful of states. Sherronna, I'll put it like this. I think Trump wins Pennsylvania. I think he wins Georgia. I think he can win Wisconsin. And I'm not buying this stuff that he's going to lose North Carolina. Hell, he's won it twice. And
he's
final comment on turnout. Yeah, final comment on turnout. Everybody's talking about how all these young voters are going to come out and they're going to overwhelm. Traditionally, you and I know this. Older voters vote in a much higher propensity than younger voters. Sherronna, you close it out here, a minute and a half.
Well, Mark, you're so on point. That's exactly right. We care the most because we have the most to lose at this point in the game, and we also know what is at stake for this younger generation for their future. So, first of all, I like to stay away from predictive programming by the MSM telling me what the election turnout is going to be because they are not close to the people. Our organization is, we know exactly what's happening on the ground in all 50 states right now. And there is no illusion for me in this race that Kamala even stands a chance, not even a chance. This 1%, 2% nonsense, I really believe this is predictive programming. They're trying to create a scenario for the public that they will digest on election day when Kamala magically wins the election that we know she didn't win. So I like to stay away from that because I really see on the ground what is happening. People are committed to securing this country. They know what is at stake. You're doing an incredible job by having this show where we can talk about what's happening in the elections, alert the American people to the role and responsibility they have to play. We are a constitutional republic. No one's coming to save us. John Wayne is dead. The cavalry is not coming. And this is not a kingdom that President Trump can save. Every American needs to take this seriously, take their duty seriously, and not only be there to vote on election day, but bring every single one of your circle of influence with you. America is not only depending on this, but the world, as you know, is counting on America to stand up and do what's in our best interest, which is to once again be a constitutional republic.
Sherronna, we're out of time, but thank you for being my guest today. A quick plug, you're on weekends on Patriot TV. What time? Okay.
Central, 2 p.m. Eastern time.
Say again?
1 p.m. Yes, 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern time, and it's so great to be a part of the Patriot TV family. Mark, thank you so much for having me on tonight. You're fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherronna. Okay, that's it for Election Edge. We'll be back on Monday with more hard hitting. Jason joins me Monday. Have a great weekend.